What is up, everybody? It is your host, Christopher Renne. This is the Chris Renne Show, episode 39. This week we're doing two parts because there's two big things I need to talk about, and I owe you a special edition because I missed recording last week due to spring break. Thank you guys for being patient. Really thank you for showing me how much you appreciated the show in the comments when I posted that. But at the end of the day, spring break was a time to go relax, have some fun, and sort of just take in the sports world as I was gone. Well, when I was gone, the conference tournaments for college basketball were happening, which lead to one of the best sporting events of the year. That's March Madness. The college basketball national tournament, the NCAA tournament, is coming up. So on this special edition of the Chris Renne Show, I'm going to be taking you through some bracket advice, some bracket tips, and some teams to look out for because I think going into the March Madness, there needs to be some talk done about it, and you need to get some of these teams on paper. Now, if I were you, the best app for it is the Tournament Challenge app by ESPN. You can fill out your brackets there, and you can join the special Mom's Basement Sport group. Just download the Tournament Challenge app. Type in Mom's Basement Sports Group in the group section and add your bracket to it. Winner gets a free shirt. So hopefully we get some participants, or I'm just going to keep a shirt. With all that being said, a little warning. Brackets are unpredictable. Whether you know basketball, whether you don't know basketball, everybody has a chance to win. Mathematically, getting all the games right is nearly impossible. You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning in a car accident and bitten by a shark in the same day as you do getting a perfect bracket. So whether you pick it off schools you like, your knowledge of the game, or mascots and colors, everyone has equal opportunity to succeed in March. So let's get into this. I'm going to be forward. The big dogs. I mean, you got Duke, UNC, Gonzaga, Virginia, Kentucky. Then you got your little second tier of big dogs. They're traditional powers that stay relevant and usually always make the tournament. Kansas, Syracuse, MSU, Michigan, Tennessee. Now, the top four I listed, Duke, UNC, Gonzaga, Virginia, are all 1 seeds. One of those teams has fallen. You just have to pick which one it is. To me, Duke's not losing in the first round. They're not losing in the round of 32. They're not losing in the round of 16. They're not losing in the Elite Eight. They're not losing in the Final Four. Duke is my champion. I'm going to put that out right away. They have 4 NBA players in their starting lineup. Zion changes the way people watch college basketball. He is the most phenomenal athlete I've ever seen, and there's only 2 or 3 teams that can match up to them physically. It's going to take a really hot shooting night. That is one weakness Duke has. They're not a very strong shooting team. Then you got UNC. They didn't start off strong. They had a lot of young players, not to the talent of Duke, but a lot of their veterans mixed with the youth have finally come together and put a very powerful team together and a very strong resume. It all started culminating when they beat Gonzaga early in the year, and it showed what their potential could be. They won 15 of their last 16, with that loss being to Duke, or to Virginia in the regular season, and then they lost to Duke in the conference tournament. So 2 losses in their last 17 games, that's pretty good. With UNC and Duke, health is a big thing. The next team, Gonzaga, Mark Few led. You never know the players of Gonzaga unless you really pay attention to West Coast Conference basketball. If you pay attention to college basketball, you've heard the name, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. They're usually a team who goes 35-2, 33-3. Depending on how they do out of conference, they are the West Coast Conference darlings. They dominate their conference every year. And the problem with them is they're coming off a loss going into the tournament. But some advice there. Gonzaga is always better coming off a loss going into a tournament. Don't ask me how I know that. It's a lot of research and a lot of stuff that went into this show. The one problem with Gonzaga, they don't get the top-level recruit you need to win the big dance. Gonzaga's great. They're a prone choker. Whether it be the round of 32 or round of 16, that's where Gonzaga usually falls out. I'm a big Gonzaga fan. I love how a small school in Spokane, Washington became a perennial power. It's a very decent school, I guess. I wouldn't say there's anything really special about Gonzaga besides their basketball team, but they put a lot of money into it. It's a lot of fun, and Mark Few does a phenomenal job using veteran players and sticking to his old ways and continuing to use the same strategy of getting overlooked and under-the-radar players to come to Gonzaga and grow into these championship-level players. And it's awesome, and they do a really good job of keeping the best talent in state now, and that's a big advantage when you're passionate about the team you play for. You move on to Virginia. Virginia lives and dies by the three. They don't really have any players that can create their own offense. They have two white dudes that have been there for 4 years. They're very good shooters. That's just the way they are. They're one of the best defensive teams. Tony Bennett's his name. If I recall... Yeah, Tony Bennett's the coach. If you remember last year, they were a 1 seed, and they got upset by University of Maryland, UMBC, whatever that is. I mean, we all remember the game. It was crazy. It wasn't close. They got run up on. And UMBC, Chicago, Loyola of Chicago, are big Cinderella stories last year, you know. So the likelihood of having two teams like that, again, very slim. That's the hardest part about having a perfect bracket, though. So, you know, you move on to some of these other top dogs, some that have struggled this year. Kentucky's flying under the radar a little bit. I mean, they're always good. They always stay consistent. They didn't have that same blue chip style recruiting class. They had two guys, the 15th and 16th recruit in the country go there. I'm not going to name drop a lot of players because, well, there's just a lot of information. I'm not Dick Vitale. But, you know, we're going to take a look at the Kentucky roster here. And they have a graduate transfer. They have a graduate transfer who came in from, Stanford, who's been a very good transfer, came in from Stanford, grad student. Reed Travis, he's been a really good rim protector. You've got a lot of freshmen on this team again, but the difference this year is they have a lot of guys who have been there. It's not the same one-and-done style, but a lot of these guys play big minutes. Cal has them good, and he's motivated because he's overlooked. And, you know, when a powerhouse like Kentucky is overlooked, it very much is a good way to drive them to be successful. So, of all the 2 seeds who could win the national title, I will say Kentucky's up there. They do have a tough road. If you want to look at some of those, the Coach Cal clips of him talking about the bracket they got, well, that's good. That's good stuff. So then you move on to Kansas. Had a really rough year, but Bill Self's a phenomenal basketball coach, and you have to worry about them in the end. Syracuse, same way. Jim Boeheim, that zone can mess with some teams in the tournament. Michigan State. Well, I did see that zone live in person, and it's a really good one. It's Jim Boeheim knows how to coach it. That team's got some shooters. Syracuse is a team to look out for as well. I think they're an 8 seed. They're not very highly touted coming in. You know, Syracuse has been really good when they came in as an underdog role. I think there was a couple years ago when they were a 10 seed and they made a run to the Final Four as one of the lowest seeds, which is funny because they're a basketball power. They have one of the greatest coaches to ever do it. But the 1 year they were a low seed, they made it to the Final Four, and that was pretty awesome. So, you know, you've got Michigan State, a very disrespected team when it came to bracketologists. They were the cream of the crop in the Big Ten throughout the year. The Big Ten's the deepest conference. They have 8 teams in it. The Michigan State-Duke game that could happen in the Elite Eight, I think that is the game I have in my Elite Eight on my best bracket. Oh, nope. Okay, so I have LSU pulling off the upset in that one. But you got to look. So Michigan always plays better in March. As an Ohio State fan, it kills me to say it, but there's something about March that John Beilein just understands, and he gets his players going. This team is, once again, it's another very balanced team. But when I was listening to some of these pundits talk about the team, the Big Ten just doesn't have the athleticism of the ACC and the SEC this year, which is fine. But Michigan's got Ignas Brazdeikis. He's a big reason they lost to Michigan State in the conference finals championship. Charles Matthews, a good guard. Jordan Poole's also a good guard, even though he's annoying as hell. He's an off-brand Kelly Oubre, and I will say that. But look for this team to play its best ball in the coming weeks. The last one's Tennessee. They played a really good year. They had a really good year. The best for Tennessee basketball since Bruce Pearl left. They have Texas' old coach Rick Barnes. And he's done such a great job getting Tennessee back to relevance. They finished hot. They beat Kentucky in the SEC tournament. Then they lost to Auburn. Auburn smoked them. Auburn was the 5 seed. So the SEC was kind of a crapshoot in the tournament, but you look at their roster, and there's it's another one of those rosters that's well balanced from top to bottom. Jordan Bone really is one of the best point guards in the country. He plays point guard the way it's supposed to be played. He works on getting other people the ball. He's a junior. He has experience. He's played at a high level for his whole entire career there. And you have players like Grant Williams, Jacob Feischman. The list goes on. You just read through the roster. You see the balance of freshmen. You see the balance of redshirt freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. You look at them. It's a team that looks like they can win. As Dick Vitale says, it passes the eye test and all that. But of the new top, there's some other top dogs as well, the new top dogs. So Auburn, speak of the devil, they have Bruce Pearl as the coach. So Tennessee lost and Auburn gained. Auburn really showed what they're capable of in the SEC tournament with that 20-point win over Tennessee. LSU lost their coach due to some bribery scandal. Houston, the best team in the American Athletic Conference, has been flying under the radar for casual fans all year, but they're a 3 seed, and they're probably going to make some noise. Then you have Purdue. Purdue's one of the most balanced teams I saw play. They have a really good big man. I cannot remember his name. Their point guard, Carson Edwards, is awesome. He really put on a show when I was at the Purdue-Ohio State game. It was hard to watch, but that dude can hoop. I think of all the teams that Purdue has put in the tournament, when you go back to the Robbie Hummel days, when you go back to the Caleb Swanigan days, is this team is way more balanced. They don't rely on just a big man. They don't rely on a couple guards. They have depth. They have an awesome point guard. They have an awesome big man, and they have shooters everywhere. They have a power forward with a high motor. He's a little undersized. You'll know him when you see him. Always fighting for rebounds, always playing bigger than he is. But, no one really cares about the top dogs. I mean, It's not fun when the bracket's all chalk, you know. So the brackets, I picked pretty chalk on mine, but, you know, I'm not going to live and die by picking underdogs and guessing like I did last year. So the underdogs to look out for, these are the mid-major darlings to watch. So Wofford is the best of the mid-major teams, I'd say. They're the Wofford Terriers. They've upset teams in the tournament before. They're a team who's consistently down in like the 12, 13, 14 region, but they're a 6 this year. I think that conference they're in is starting to get some respect. I think it's the NEAC Conference, the Northeastern Athletic Conference. They're in the Southern Conference. Okay, so Wofford. Oh, yeah, Wofford's in South Carolina. You know, I'm going to be making a lot of mistakes on geographics on this show with some of these smaller schools, so stay with me. Funny thing, Wofford is in the Southern Conference. The Southern Conference headquarters is in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which is where Zion Williamson is from, which is just south of North Carolina, which is where Duke is. So there's some connection there. I think Wofford upsetting Duke, maybe. Who knows? I really do like Wofford this year. You know, you really don't hear much about these mid-major teams unless you're actually a college basketball guy or a bettor. I'm neither. But Wofford is a team that really shoots the ball. That's the thing that can be dangerous for a bigger team. A team that doesn't defend well, a team that doesn't create their own offense well, is if Wofford catches fire and they shoot like 55, 60% in this one game scenario, they can really ruin someone's tournament. And I could really see it happening. They play Seton Hall first. They are a 7 seed. That's a correction there. I said 6. They are a 7th seed. I think of the upsets to watch in that 1 versus 8-9, 2 versus 7-10, Wofford over Kentucky would be a big one to watch. Now, I didn't pick it that way, but I'd be sure. So, some advice. You're going to have to pick one upset. Just roll with it. Root for it. Hopefully you get it right. I need to find mine real quick to show everybody. I picked St. Mary's over Villanova. St. Mary's has sort of been playing the ball, and that's why they're my next mid-major darling to watch. They beat Gonzaga in the Western Conference tournament. It was cool. Really messed up everyone's bracket predictions. Gonzaga still ended up being a number 1 seed due to some stuff that happened in other conference tournaments. It's whatever. Gonzaga definitely was deserving. One loss shouldn't be that, but it was needed for St. Mary's to get in the tournament. I chose Nevada to beat Michigan. Nevada isn't. I'd say they're right above what we'd call a mid-major. They're not like St. Mary's or Wofford where they're a small school. They are a state school, the University of Nevada, Reno, the Wolfpack. They do play in a respected conference in the Mountain West. Nevada was a team that came in with a lot of preseason hype. If I remember, they were a top 10 preseason team. Battled some injuries throughout the year, got upset a little bit, didn't have that same magic as last year. But coming down the stretch, they really started playing some good basketball, started finding a new identity. And if I was to pick a 7 seed to get to a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8, Nevada would be one of my favorite picks. I'm pretty sure they're led by 2 twin brothers. If not, that was last year. But still, at the end of the day, they have a very, very mature roster. Yeah, they're led by 2 guards of identical stature. Caleb Martin and Cody Martin. They're both seniors. They both came back to try to win again. They're both really good players. Nevada's a team with surprise depth. They don't have great players off the bench, but they use a lot of guys. That doesn't really come into play in the tournament. I think in the tournament you want teams that have 8 guys really that can just play and hoop. I think that's one thing you get more from bigger schools. But college basketball is a little different than the NBA because there's know your role guys. And, you look at teams like the Warriors in the NBA. You look at teams like the Rockets. You have a bunch of know your role guys, the PJ Tuckers. And in college basketball, that's one thing that really defines the mid-majors, is a bunch of dudes using their strengths to get the maximum of their potential and winning. And that's why I think Nevada is one of those teams that can really do it. They have those two brothers, the twin brothers, the Porter brothers, or the Martin brothers, very, very good players. They will play in the NBA. They have NBA bodies. It would be crazy if they ended up on the same team again. Probably won't happen. The Murray State Racers. All right, they have one of the best players in the country in Ja Morant. If you haven't seen his highlights, go watch them. That's all I need to say. Mid-major darling to watch, Murray State. If they do win, it's because Ja Morant put up like a 35, 40-point game, and the rest of his team showed out as well. Then you get to teams of the lesser known. You got Liberty University. They're a pretty consistent team. So this is the team I'd look out for. They're all right. The Atlantic Sun. You've had some really good teams in the tournament come from the Atlantic Sun. A couple years ago, you had North Florida. Lipscomb was the best team, but they ended up losing. I think Liberty can be a very cool team to watch. I really do think they're capable of upsetting Mississippi State in the first round. They're my low seed. I think could really win. As a fan, I'm not really a big fan of Mississippi State as a basketball team. I do have them beating Liberty and beating Virginia Tech. I just think it was a reasonable choice, but watch out for them. I think they can be an interesting team. I think they're a team that can lose. And then St. Louis University. All right, St. Louis University is a small school, and I'm guessing you can guess where it is. They compete in the Atlantic 10. That's actually a pretty well-known conference. You have teams like Dayton, St. Bonaventure, Davidson. These are teams that have put out upsets in the tournament. Davidson's where Steph Curry started. St. Louis might be able to pull together some of that same magic. They were a 6 seed in the Atlantic 10 tournament. They came out, won that tournament. That doesn't really do the Atlantic 10 justice. It was a pretty balanced conference from top to bottom. Another one I think you can look out for. Virginia Commonwealth's been there before. UCF. These are just quick lists. I think Minnesota's going to beat Louisville. Murray State, I picked them winning in the first round. You can't pick too many upsets, but you got to pick enough. It's going to be hard going through all the teams. That's why, guess what we're going to do right now? We're going to go through each of the 64 game teams, and we're going to pick a bracket. And I'm going to explain to you my reasoning and my choices. I think that'll be the best way to put into words what I'm thinking, and we'll do it right now. I will be creating a bracket. So the first game, the play-in winner, it's predicted it'll be NC Central. That's projected. Guess what? I'm picking Duke. They're the best team in the tournament. All right, so now you come in, you got Virginia Commonwealth versus the Central Florida Knights. UCF claimed a national championship in football. Virginia Commonwealth almost won one in basketball. They've played a very similar schedule. In the simulation that ESPN did, VCU takes it 61% of the time. The point spread, UCF is favored by -1.5. Virginia Commonwealth is the number 2 in defense and also count offensive rebounding as a relative strength. They don't shoot the three well. The Central Florida Knights are very good at defense as well. They shoot the ball decent. I wouldn't say great, but they aren't as good as Virginia Commonwealth, and I don't think they're ready for this. So I'm going with VCU on this one. Next, you have Mississippi State versus one of the mid-major darlings I was talking about. So Mississippi State's one of those teams that leads the country in second chance points and extra possessions because of their offensive rebounding. They score the ball effectively from a multitude of ways. Where Liberty excels at getting to the line, they're ranking top 20 in both categories in shooting accuracy, so they're one of the higher shooting percent of teams. The stats say Mississippi State points per possession is 1.097 versus 1.085. Not a big difference, I guess, but the effective field goal percentage favors Liberty. You look at the rankings. Rankings don't mean everything. Liberty is the Atlantic Sun. They're a mid-major darling of mine. I am going to go with Mississippi State here. They're a better basketball team. And here we go. The Virginia Tech Hokies versus St. Louis Billikens. The Billikens are, once again, a very good offensive rebounding team, but they don't have near the talent or near the shooting capabilities of Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's a very unpredictable team in the tournament. You never know what you're going to get. That's why I think they're an upset favorite, but I'm going to go with Virginia Tech. So now we get to the Maryland-Belmont game. Belmont's a projected winner. I don't really think it matters who wins this game, but I think the Maryland's been struggling really hard down the stretch. They didn't do too well in the Big Ten tournament. Of all the seeds, 6 seeds that can lose to the 11, I think Maryland's up there. Belmont shoots the ball really well. Belmont forces a lot of turnovers and doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Maryland's a better defensive team, but Belmont's a really good shooting team. They shoot well from outside. I do think with how Maryland struggled down the stretch, Belmont will be the first upset I pick. Now we're to LSU and Yale. I'm not really going to take long on this one. LSU's played excessively hard this year. They've been a really great basketball team. I won't say it's unfortunate that they lost their coach because if he was doing illegal stuff, it's not cool. But I do think they're too talented to lose to Yale. I think they have too much leadership to lose to Yale. And I really do think LSU can still make a deep run in this tournament. Then you get Louisville versus Minnesota. These teams are pretty much identical in so many ways. Louisville's favored. Neither team shoots three-pointers that well. Looking at the stats here, I'm going to go with the Big Ten team, the 10/7. And then Michigan State's an easy pick. Bradley's just not really on par, and Michigan State's playing great basketball right now. So now you go to the West region. I'm going to pick Gonzaga to win this first game. Of all the 16 seeds, Farley Dickinson's my least favorite. So we're going with the 1 seed Gonzaga. All right, talked about them. They're a power. Baylor played some really good basketball through some stretches and played some really bad basketball through other stretches this year. I don't think the Big 12 is as tough as the ACC. Syracuse is really good at creating second chance points. Offensive rebounding is a big strength. That zone, like I talked about earlier when I was talking about the big dogs, is a very strong point of emphasis for them, and I think it'll make a team like Baylor, who doesn't create their own shot well, struggle. So we'll go with that. On the Murray State Marquette Golden Eagles, Marquette's a better team. Murray State has the best player. I'm going to go with Murray State. John Morant's got this. I like Vermont. They're my favorite mid-major team. I'm excited to watch them. Florida State played really good basketball down the stretch. Don't let that game against Duke fool you. Florida State's a really good basketball team. They've got a lot of depth and a lot of balance among that roster. Arizona State versus Buffalo. The Pac-12 was the biggest crapshoot of the year. You never knew what you were going to get. That being said, I'm picking them. 11 seed. All right. So now we got Texas Tech versus North Kentucky. North Kentucky are not going to get as lucky this year. Texas Tech's my favorite team in the Big 12. The Red Raiders are moving forward. We talked about Nevada. I got them over Florida. And then Michigan is one of the best teams in March. So they're not going to lose to the Montana Grizzlies. Shout out, Mama. Montana, Missoula. I guess go blue. Being right's more important than being honest. Gardner-Webb, not going to beat Virginia. Virginia's not going to lose to a 16 seed last year. That is all the motivation any team should need to not lose that game. Ole Miss, don't know much about them. Going to be real. The stats say they score the ball well, and they don't rebound well. Whereas Oklahoma defends the ball well and handles it well. So, I mean, this one's 50-50. Honestly, we'll flip a coin. It landed on tails. We'll go 9 seed. Wisconsin versus Oregon. Wisconsin. I wouldn't want to play Oregon if I was anybody right now, but I'm taking Wisconsin still. Sorry, and teachers. We're going with Kansas State, picking chalk. St. Mary's playing really good basketball right now. That's not something this website's talking about. Who's playing well right now? Villanova struggled throughout the year, started finding themselves, but St. Mary's with the upset. Purdue's my favorite 1 through 4 seed to watch, even though there are close rivals in basketball. I really like watching Carson Edwards play basketball. That dude is a stud. I told you they had a great big. They rebound the ball well, and they get a lot of second chance opportunities. It absolutely killed Ohio State when I watched that game. Cincinnati, Iowa. Iowa's well coached. Cincinnati's not. Just kidding. I like Cincinnati. They're a good team, but I'm going Iowa. Big shot Bohannon's coming up big in his last ride. And then I don't think Colgate will really touch Tennessee. So we're moving forward to the Midwest region. 2 teams from the Carolinas. Iona sucks. It's a school that's very full of itself. It's one of those, we're almost Ivy League universities. So I'm going with the UNC Tar Heels to put them in their place and show them that they're not alpha. Washington versus Utah State. Utah State's really a weird team. They're not big, but they rebound well, and they play really good defense. Washington, not ready for them. Auburn versus New Mexico State. I really like Auburn. I really like Bruce Pearl. They're going to have them ready to go. Don't know much about New Mexico State, but I know enough about Auburn to think they're not going to lose in the first round. Northeastern, a school in Boston. The forgotten Boston University behind Harvard, MIT, and Boston University. I think Northeastern will want to prove themselves, but as much as Kansas has struggled, I really don't see that loss happening. Not really going to discuss this one. I'm picking Ohio State because I'm picking Ohio State. Houston, we talked about them. Georgia State really just doesn't have it. Wofford, my favorite mid-major darling, one of the best shooting teams in the country. And then Kentucky versus Abilene Christian. This is probably the easiest 2-15 matchup to pick. Coach Cal's highly motivated. A lot of the players are as well because they're getting overlooked for a Kentucky team. All right, so now we're round of 32. We're getting there. Duke's winning. Do I really need to talk about it? Zion, RJ Barrett, Reddish, Trey Jones, 4 NBA players. Said it earlier. Mississippi State, Virginia Tech. I know I talked about Mississippi State being not great, but I think the way they match up against Virginia Tech and the way they get second shot opportunities and they like to get out in transition, the Hokies are a 3-point shooting team, so if their shots aren't falling, they live and die by the 3. I think this matchup is of polar opposites, but I think it can work out in favor of each. If Virginia Tech is hitting their shots, they're going to win. If they're missing the shots, Mississippi State's going to win. It's pretty much it. I know it sounds simple on paper. You don't miss all your shots, but if they miss enough shots, it's going to be really tough. So I'm going with the Bulldogs. The play-in winner will be beat by LSU. Then we're going to go with the Spartans over Minnesota. I think they've swept them this year, beat them twice. This is where it gets interesting because I've talked about Gonzaga choking. Do they choke in the round of 32 this year or the round of 16? I really think Syracuse can do it. I really am going to pick an 8-seed Syracuse to win this one. I don't think Ja Morant and this OVC, Ohio Valley Conference Murray State Racers team can get past Florida State. Florida State's going to win that one. Playing winner, Arizona State versus Texas Tech. I told you guys the Texas Tech Red Raiders are my favorite team in the Big 12. They're one of the most well-rounded teams in the Big 12, and they play real defense, and Arizona State won't be able to survive that. Then Nevada versus Michigan. As much as I want to pick the upset and I want Nevada, the Wolfpack, to beat the Wolverines, I do keep saying that Michigan plays their best ball in March. John Beilein really always gets his guys ready to play. They don't turn the ball over. And as much as I like Nevada, they're not beating that school up north. So now we get into the South and Midwest region. Got to pick all 8 games. Virginia's going to beat Oklahoma. They're just a better team. I got Wisconsin over Kansas State. Purdue's going to beat St. Mary's. I think Tennessee will beat Iowa. UNC, I hope they beat Utah State. I like them a lot. I'll take Auburn over Kansas this year. I will pick Ohio State because, well, I go to Ohio State. Wofford versus Kentucky. As much as I love Wofford, these are a lot closer than it should be. So, the power rankings all favor Kentucky. The similar games all favor Kentucky. The simulation favors Kentucky. The average percentage of winning from a 2 seed versus a 7 is 2 out of 3 times. But, you know, it's 52-48. This could be the upset. This can be the real one. So I'm going to pick my darling. I'm going to pick Wofford. Sorry, Kentucky. I picked you to go far in my other bracket. I picked you to the Final Four. I actually think I picked you to the national title. But not in this one. Not on the show bracket. Duke beats Mississippi State. I think Michigan State, if LSU had their coach, I think they do beat Michigan State, but they don't. So I'm going to go with the Spartans, who have the better coach at this point. Syracuse, Florida State, I'm going with the Qs. I mean, it might be crazy to pick an 8 seed to go all the way to the Elite 8 from this jump, but Syracuse is different than most 8 seeds where they have a coach who's been here so many times who's going to find ways to get his players in the right position to win these games. His players aren't going to be as nervous. They're not going to be as tight as some of these other players. And there's no expectation for Syracuse, and that usually always favors a bigger name school. Texas Tech plays Michigan in the West Sweet 16, Part 2. Texas Tech's my favorite team in the Big 12. But I just think Michigan's going to keep doing it. It hurts. It really does every time. I really struggle to pick Virginia to go past the Sweet 16 every time I do a bracket. But I'm going to do it here. Purdue versus Tennessee. I'm taking Purdue. North Carolina, Auburn. Sorry, Auburn. This is where your road ends. And then Ohio State, Wofford. All right, this is getting weird. Ugh. I think Wofford's better than Ohio State currently. But you know what? We're going Ohio State again. All right, Duke beats Michigan State. Michigan beats Syracuse. Virginia beats Purdue. No, timeout. Go back. Purdue beats Virginia. And UNC versus Ohio State. That's a tough one. You know what? I guess I'll go Ohio State. They'll go to the Final Four this year. It's a pretty reasonable assumption, I'd say. Duke beats Michigan. Purdue, Ohio State. I was there. Ohio State wasn't that far off. So if Ohio State gets to play Purdue again in the Final Four, they might get there. Tough decision. Let's wait. Caleb Wesson's back. C.J. Jackson's healthier. Luther Muhammad's shooting well. The team sort of fell apart at the end, but, we'll go Ohio State. Then Ohio State, Duke. I really think, you get to the national title, anything's possible. I think this is the year. I think they finally do it. I think Ohio State wins the national championship. No, I'm just kidding. I'm picking Duke. Save bracket. In reality, we'll go back through that end. I know I made some jokes about Ohio State getting there. Let's see where they are. If you really look at my other bracket, I'm probably taking UNC. We'll switch Wofford with UK. I'll switch UK with UNC. If Ohio State makes it that far, well, fuck me, right? But in reality, I do think it'll be a UNC. I think it'll be. I want to pick Purdue, and it's a coin flip. But I really do think of all the teams, it probably will just be a North Carolina Duke national title. And it's going to be 69-60. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my bracket breakdown and doing this bracket with me. When you guys, I will make my fan bracket on teams I just want to win. You'll see that one as well. So we're going to put this bracket in some groups. I'll put this in the Theta's a state group. We'll put it in. And then, that's brackets, baby. Just remember some tips. Got to pick some upsets. You got to pick some chalk. It's a balance. Everyone's got a shot. Anyways, I'll be back. If you like this show, hopefully you like my free agency show. It's going to be another fast-paced show, trying to get a lot of information in. Hopefully you guys had some fun listening to me break down this bracket. If you didn't, well, we'll never do this again. But thanks for listening.